So I have a new favorite game, and it comes from developer Not Suspicious, and I cannot stop playing it. I'm not even getting paid for this, I just love it. And I feel you need to know about it so you can love it too. It's called Airspace Defender, and it's a reimagining of the original Atari missile command. Now look, I have to tell you that although I have nostalgia for arcade classics of my childhood, I was really never that big a fan of Missile Command. It's not that it wasn't a good game or that it didn't have solid controls, but because, and if I'm to be frank, I just sucked at it. And Airspace Defender isn't any easier. In fact, it's even more difficult. But there's just something about their use of 3D space, hand tracking, and maybe most of all, their depiction of an explosion when one of your missiles collides with an incoming volley that makes it just so satisfying. So it's like this. It's a war. A series of computer-controlled attack waves of ICBM missiles. Players must defend their cities and missile bases as long as possible by guiding the missiles to intercept and destroy the invading ICBM missiles. The game is completed when all the player cities have been totally annihilated. Difficulty, challenge, and excitement increases with each successive wave. The objective is to keep the home cities safe from destruction as long as possible for longest potential gameplay. The better the skill, the bigger the reward. So get this. I didn't just describe Airspace Defender, I actually read the original arcade flyer for Atari's Missile Command, yet everything you just heard 100% mirrors the gameplay of Airspace Defender. But Airspace Defender isn't a Missile Command throwback, but instead a love letter to Missile Command. And like every true homage, it turns the dial to 11. For instance, the entire game is beautifully rendered in a synthwave meets atom punk aesthetic with a gratifying synthwave backing soundtrack. The playfield is presented in augmented reality. It literally floats in front of you, turning your living room into an IKEA-adorned dystopian nightmare. ICBMs rain down from multiple directions, but they're not your common 1980s missiles. You instead have to contend with a volley of slow-moving bombs, high-speed missiles, drunken kamikaze planes, attack choppers, and more. And where you had the threat of 2 dimensions in Missile Command, you now have to confront attacks from 360 degrees, meaning you can't just stand there, you have to get your ass moving. Thankfully, you have an armory of weapons to fight back. Single-shot missiles, cluster bombs, lasers, remote-controlled drones, and more, which you can mix and match with each completed wave. And the tension built wave after wave in Missile Command that drove me away from it instead just feels right in Airspace Defender, meaning I'm not throwing my headset across the room in disgust anymore, but instead diving in for more. This is clearly the product of a game that appears elementary on the surface, but given the time and love necessary to make it a truly great game. The immersion and presentation of Airspace Defender is a shining example of how VR provides value over a flat screen game. And if you choose to pass on it, you're not just missing out on a great game, but an exemplary VR experience. I was so inspired by Airspace Defender that I just had to get a hold of Missile Command expert Bill Carlton to get his thoughts on it. Bill is a legend in the retro arcade world. He's so well known for his marathon gaming record attempts that Mac Attack Films chronicled his efforts to beat the Missile Command world record in the documentary High Score. But I couldn't just stop there. I needed developer Not Suspicious to hear Bill's thoughts and tell us what inspired them to make Airspace Defender. All right, so we have Guillaume and Rafa from Not Suspicious, and we have Missile Command record holder and legendary internationally known gaming celebrity Bill Carlton. Today we're going to talk about the game Airspace Defender by these gentlemen from Not Suspicious, and we have Bill along with us here to talk about his legacy as a Missile Command high score holder, keeper, defender, and what he thinks of this game. So guys, thank you so much for coming today. I really, when I first saw the game, straight off the bat, it's high quality, it's a fun game, and you associated it with Missile Command. So if you guys can kind of give me your background on how this game started, and if you want to introduce yourselves a little bit and talk about how you came up with the name Not Suspicious.
When the Oculus Kickstarter came out, I immediately was fascinated by virtual reality. And I made it my mission to try to get access to the hardware. Eventually, that took me to the United States, where I met Guillaume. While I was living there, we started the company that we called Not Suspicious. I say we started it, but really I was a volunteer, right? And this is partly where the name comes from. I didn't have permission to start the company, and so I didn't. Guillaume started the company. I was just a volunteer, hence not suspicious. Fast forward, COVID happens and so on. Like I moved back to Europe, and we just started working on different projects. And last year, I reached out to Meta again and I asked them for a Quest 3. They sent it to me, and I was trying piano vision on the Quest 3, and I was mind blown by how far the mixed reality and the hand tracking had come. And so I started thinking, okay, well, from first principles, all the glasses that we're going to be wearing in the future are not going to be able to do like VR. It's going to be augmented reality. It's going to have like a lower field of vision and so on and so forth. There were rumors already about Orion, and Apple had came out with the Vision Pro, which their philosophy is it's going to be hand and eye tracking, so no controllers, right? So up until this point, we had been doing VR at Not Suspicious. And essentially, I wanted to pivot the company to like do a hard pivot to mixed reality and hand tracking. And luckily, Meta gave us this opportunity. They invited the company to go to a hackathon in New York in April of this year. And that's when we all came together. Myself, Guillaume, and two of our friends also joined, and then Guillaume had the brilliant insights of trying to design Missile Command for this paradigm that we wanted to explore, which was tabletop mixed reality with hand tracking native, right? And also we wanted to try to push the limits of the hand tracking a little bit, like to see what how fast can the gameplay be and so on. And so that's why the idea of Missile Command was such an amazing fit for what we were trying to experiment with.
What we were trying to think of when we were brainstorming was we were trying to picture something that was already known to be simple and fun because it was a hackathon. Our goal was to make something in 4 days that would be fun. So it had to be simple. And this is just a good idea in general. And on top of trying to make something simple and fun, we wanted to make something that really would feel different in 3 dimensions.
So describe Airspace Defender.
Yeah, so Airspace Defender is a point and click action game where you have a little sort of volume in front of you that's your city. We really tried to make it like a little toy city, something that would be about the right size to be fun to play with, and you pinch to point and click in space to fire missiles. Enemy missiles are raining down from above you, and you need to lead them with your missiles if you want to successfully hit them, because your missiles have a travel time, they have a travel time, and your explosions last a very long time compared to typical games. That's the part that we lifted whole cloth from the original Missile Command, because it creates this substantial depth where you can pick and choose where to shoot in order to get multiple enemies in one hit or cause a chain reaction.
Sure. Yeah. So how would you say that it deviates? So for those that are familiar with Missile Command, how would you say it deviates from that?
So in general, so in a sense it deviates very little, but what I have found in my experience designing games so far in my life is that if you pick one substantial difference and then you follow the logical implications of that for any given starting game idea, you end up in a very different place. And so in this case, the only thing it deviated in is the fact that it's a 3-dimensional volume that the game takes place in. What a lot of the ways it's different are just, and I think this is common for most games, right, is that they're just accidents of how we went about trying to fulfill the dream of what if it was Missile Command but 3-dimensional.
So Bill and I spoke the other day. Bill has, this amazing history with Missile Command. And before I go to exactly where I was about to go to, Bill, do me a favor, introduce yourself and explain how you intersect with Airspace Defender.
Sure. When the game first came out in 1980, I was a 13-year-old kid, mowing lawns and using every quarter that I earned to play every new arcade game as it came out. And even though I wasn't a natural at Missile Command, I had two friends of mine that were. They were unbelievable. And the first time they ever reached the magic score of 810,000, where it gives you 176 bonus cities, our heads blew up. We had no idea at the time how many cities it had awarded us. It took years to do the math to figure out the exact number. But what would happen is these two, in particular, friends of mine would get bored with the game and leave me the game with hundreds of cities just begging to be played. And it was through determination and playing all those bonus cities over and over, and the drive to want to be good at this game. You know, when Missile Command came out, it seemed real basic. There's a ball with an X on the screen, roll the ball to where you want to shoot the missile. I thought at the time that there would be many more games to follow that followed that exact gameplay, and there were not. And it was 20 years later when I could finally afford to purchase a used out-of-date Missile Command that I got one and brought it home and decided it was finally time to achieve goals that I had set as a youngster that I just didn't have the time for, or the money, or the gumption. 20 years later is when I started to set more records on other games. And then finally I had developed a little bit of a name for myself, and I was approached by Mac Attack Films, and we created the documentary High Score, and the rest in Missile Command history is history.
Oh yeah, you are legendarily now part of not just Missile Command history, but I hate saying the word retro because it makes me feel old, but retro arcade, classic arcade gaming.
So Bill, I have wondered this. It seems to have been to our advantage. Why do you think there haven't been a lot of spiritual successors to Missile Command?
Yeah, there is one follow-up to Missile Command called Super Missile Attack, but it was made illegally by a different company, which stole all the the whole idea and the original programming. And the Super Missile Attack is crazy, insane, difficult. If anybody thinks Missile Command's hard, wait till they try Super Missile Attack.
So where I want to kind of intersect this is, Guillaume, you were talking about how to make a Missile Command game in VR, and you used hand tracking and you had a volume and it's 3D space. So Bill was telling me when he was imagining what this might be like in VR, he had a very specific thought as to what it was. And so Bill, can you describe what you thought it might be?
Sure. When you first approached me with this idea, what I pictured, and I don't have VR experience, Quest experience whatsoever. I think I've played with the Oculus once or twice about 4 or 5 years ago. That was the extent. But what I pictured was the game of Missile Command being played where the right hand movement would move an X around on a 2D flat surface screen in front of me, and then I would pinch 1, 2, or 3 fingers on my left hand, and it would just be basic and playing off of the way the original. But when the game did arrive, and I did start to play with that floating flat surface, but the dome and the pinching, I was very surprised. It was greater than my imagination, and I think it's very challenging. You guys have got a great idea, and I think Quest players, the people that play VR and AR, I think they're gonna find this very challenging. I think they're gonna dig it.
Exactly. You guys have taken what is a beautifully simple game, so much so that there's a documentary, about it with Bill playing it. You brought it into VR without making it difficult, because people will often have this idea of, and Guillaume, you've spoken to this, what other retro game can I put into VR? And they try to just take the game and shove it into VR, as opposed to, no, you got to reimagine it. You have a different point of view. You have infinite dimensions versus just 2 dimensions, and I think you guys
there's a sort of really strong incentive of actually guiding the design and the choice of Missile Command, which is when you're doing the hand tracking, detecting a pinch works pretty well, especially because you can feel whether you've done a pinch yourself. Almost no other gestures tend to work reliably. So it's not just that the game has to work well in 3 dimensions. The hardware is still early enough that there are only a few kinds of very simple inputs that are reliable enough that you would want to make a challenging game around them.
So, Bill, what has been the challenge for you when you play Airspace Defender? You immediately recognized it was different.
Well, with every gaming challenge, to me, it comes down to what's the eventual score I can get, or how can I get better and figure out the mechanics of the game. The first 2 or 3 games I played, I stood directly in front, not realizing I could look around to the left and the right and move around the base. And then once I did and started getting an idea of the 3D of how the missiles are coming in, I liked it quite a bit. What I like with the helicopters is that you hear that a helicopter is now in play and you have to go looking for it. Moving around the base, having that as an option versus a flat screen game, it's very creative. My hat's off to these two guys, man. I would not have come up with such a creative idea. I'm actually blown away with the gameplay, its presentation, how it sits floating in front of you without moving around. It's way more than my imagination had thought of.
So, are there any tips you'd give people to try to get a higher score in the game?
So we haven't tutorialized this yet, but there is a combo system in the game. And so if you get multiple kills with one pinch, meaning, for example, if you have the minigun and you just pinch and drag and try to kill as many missiles as possible with that one pinch and drag, then you'll get combos. Or for example, if you use the cluster bomb or the mortar, and then you try to kill as many missiles as you can with that, you can get combos, and that will get you a much higher score.
My big tip, this is actually something I do want to have widely known. When you're doing the hand tracking, this is not something we control, where this is an API provided to us by Meta, manufacturers of the headset. And they've done their best to just use cameras and then some sort of machine learning algorithm to figure out where your hand is in space. Because sometimes it can't see all of your hand. So if you position your hand in the sort of classic, like, okay, World War II symbol, and the computer can see your entire hand while you do the pinch, that helps. And if you pinch and hold a little bit, if the computer didn't see the pinch in the first frame, it might see it on the second frame, and then it'll still register and you'll probably still land your shot. So if you face your hand to camera, and if you pinch and hold a little bit to give it time to make sure it really detects, you're much more likely to never have it miss your clicks. Whereas if you try to face it like this, or if you do really fast pinches that might not even have a frame to register, then you might end up having problems.
So, Bill, when you played the original Missile Command, there was basically just one weapon, which is, warheads. But in this, you have like a multi-fire type of Gatling gun. You have drones. What was your favorite?
Bringing in modern options to a game that had no options. Back then we had no pause button. We had no pick your background. We had no pick your character. We had no, I want a green skirt instead of a blue skirt. There was none of that. But by you guys adding that in, that's bringing modern gaming into, a classic realm.
I feel like some of these are not like the others. No pause button is really just shameful. It's caused you personally so much grief.
What I like about the game that you've created is it does go back to that, but you're introducing, more options. Choose your upgrade. I think that's great.
What do you guys have in store for Airspace Defender that's maybe not in it yet? Do you feel comfortable releasing any surprises?
Right now is we're experimenting with ways to make stronger players have to vary their play style more. So some kind of system that would, for instance, offer you a little mini quest that gives you bonus points, or offer you quests that have varying reward quality depending on which weapon you pick, so that you not necessarily just always pick your favorite weapon, which it's a common game design problem, is that players will just do the thing they think works best, even if they would have more fun if they did a wider variety. But in the longer run, we have pretty substantial ambitions. We want some kind of campaign mode. We want there to be maps that you can complete instead of just having every map be arcade style. So this is perhaps this is anathema to you, Bill, but there's a lot of players for whom points are not intrinsically satisfying.
So for those people, points is really I think about this sometime. Like Bill and I come from a time where points meant everything. So you could go to school on Monday and brag about how many points you had, or like in the high score documentary, the way Bill got noticed was the guy that owned the local arcade. He noticed that someone was, what was it, 1,000,000 points, Bill? You would always get up to 1,000,000 points and keep it there every day.
Every day that I would pass by that game room, whether I spent a quarter or if I spent, $5 for the day, I would make sure to go over to the asteroids and put up my name and put up a 9999990, because anytime they power cycle the asteroids, it loses all the high scores. But they were noticing every day someone was coming in and doing that. And sure enough, that's how I made a little name for myself in the local game room. But when it came to Mac Attack Films getting a hold of me, it was because after I had done the asteroids attempt and all the gaming forums blew up with my name, that's when Mac Attack Films got a hold of me, asked me about my asteroids marathon attempt. And I explained to Mac Attack, I said, it's odd that you're getting a hold of me now, because next up I'm going to do a different game called Missile Command. And his head blew up and he got on a flight and he flew out from New York that week and we talked.
So I love that you guys have a high score. And then at the end, you see the high score table floating in front of you. So you instantly get recognition of I'm doing well or I'm not doing well, along with the old school game that you are bringing into 2024. You've also brought in that excitement and that badge of honor.
When it comes to the scoring, I thought it was a great idea that you guys had, where on the right-hand side, one of the charts shows all time, and on the left-hand side, the other chart shows for the month. I'm guessing that resets on the first of every month. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think you'll be having defense players playing on the first or second of every month to try to, people that care about their scores, you're going to give them another option there. I think that's great.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah, that was exactly the point. Yeah, the where we were coming from.
When you played at the arcade and there were other people who were regulars who you knew, and they could see if you were doing a good job and celebrate, or be jealous even, that is a level of social motivation that we just cannot compete with, at least not with a simple global high score table. And so something that we really want to work on as the game becomes more complete is finding a way to recover some of that feeling of having a small community of people who are invested in what you're doing. So for instance, we're going to try to add maybe a replay system so that you can watch somebody's playthrough. So even though you weren't in the same room, so it's not quite the same, at least you can send your friend a link to the big achievement that you had, and they could watch it, celebrate with you.
Yeah, there's been requests for multiplayer as well, which is not something we can commit to, but it's definitely something we would love to explore. Let's put it that way.
So I'm on one side of the dome. Bill, you're on the other.
That's exactly right.
Are we then helping defend, or does the
cooperatively
have the opposite?
Yeah, there's many ways to go about it. Yeah. Definitely cooperatively. But you could also have co-located multiplayer, so that if you and the family member have headsets, you can play it in the same, in the same physical space, or remotely, or whatever. There's different ways to do it.
So right now, the game is not on the official Metastore, right?
It is.
It is. It's just in early access. We wanna do like a 12-month development cycle for projects internally, but if we don't get to implement all the things we want to in Airspace Defender by the deadline of 6 months that we've imposed on ourselves, we'll just extend the deadline, and we'll just keep working on Airspace Defender for as long as we feel passionate about it, and for as long as people support us, of course.
Do you see it going to any other platforms?
Maybe on one more platform. We're still exploring another partnership with another platform holder, but at the moment it's just MetaQuest.
How can someone go about getting Airspace Defender on the Quest?
They can just buy it on the MetaQuest store in early access. It's just go on the MetaQuest store in your headset. You just search for Airspace Defender, and you will find it right away.
If you had one sales pitch or an elevator pitch, what is it that you would tell them?
If you ever have a situation where you have 10 minutes to play, or you just don't want to commit to something big, but you like using your VR headset, then this might be your best option, honestly.
And that plugs in with exactly what Bill was saying, that there was a time where we could walk into an arcade, put in a quarter, play for 2 to 10 minutes, and then leave or go to another game. And you're not stuck with a $60 game that you have to play for the next 6 months because you spent all your $60. You know, I mean, Airspace Defender is a perfect, like you said, snackable game, and I think it's at a great price. $15, I think. I mean, that's average, if not below the average. So I think anyone can afford it. So Rafa,
it's maybe 6 1980s quarters, something like that.
There you go. Rafa, you had said that there, if someone joins the Discord, is there any possibility of like any bonuses from that?
Yeah. If someone joins our Discord, we have a discount code, a promo code available in there for 20% off. So our Discord would be, you just go to notsuspicious.biz/Discord. And then once you join, we'll welcome you and we'll help you find the discount.
Perfect.
And we're also gonna be enrolled in some upcoming promotions like Black Friday and holidays and so on.
Oh, perfect.
And if you get on the leaderboards, we promise to notice and celebrate you in our little community. That's something we've been really enjoying.
I appreciate you guys making this game and keeping Missile Command alive. I realize you can't call it Missile Command, but you're keeping the gameplay alive, and I appreciate it. I'm going to try to conquer this game.
We have been so excited for that.
There's no better compliment than Bill Carlton saying that your game that's based on Missile Command is a good game and everyone should go and play it. I mean, seriously, there's not a better compliment.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you so much.
Well, congratulations, guys. I truly, I mean, I'm not getting anything out of this other than, well, the game. I love the game, and I was so inspired by it that we've got all four of us here talking about it on a Sunday morning. So I really appreciate it. So Guillaume and Rafa from Not Suspicious, thank you very much. And the Missile Command record holder and legendary internationally known game celebrity, Bill Carlton. Bill, I very much appreciate you. You guys are wonderful. Thank you so much for talking with me today.